Hajime!
Hello, Legionaries. This is the War Room and General Lance with Sergeant Barnes, and with our special guest here today, a most auspicious guest, and one of the ones that really had a deep impact on me in my formative years, and continues to be a great moral compass to me and grounding compass. Quintus Curtius, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Lance. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who don't know, Quintus Curtius is a longtime poster, and especially in an era where men don't step up for their country, for their community, for the people that come, after them. Quintus Curtius has always stood there as a column to build the future, and it's precisely men like him which are the reason why I believe America is going to pull out of its death spiral, and we're going to be able to build each other up as a team, one nation together, and understanding each other. And so I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you on that part, and also draw attention to your website, qcurtius.com, and also your myriad books, which actually has been a massive impact on me as well. For instance, you have a number of translations, as well as, of course, your personal digest of essays. Numbering among these are the Lives of the Great Commanders, which is a great book if you're in the military and you're trying to do hip pocket studies or classes and teach campaign studies and leadership. Lives of the Great Commanders is a great book. I highly recommend it. And my second favorite is On Duties by Cicero, and it's a brand new translation which makes it really, it brings to life Cicero in the modern context. And then, of course, your essay collections, Digest 37, Pantheon, Pathways. I guess this all comes to a head in the sense of, what is it that spurred you to take the initiative to, encumber upon yourself the risk, professional and otherwise, to fight for what's right, to show people what right looks like, and have that kind of moral message. What made you start?
Well, Lance, sometimes I ask myself that question, and I don't. It really is amazing, because I first started writing in 2013. And I contributed to different websites, and then I got my own website, and then I decided to put some of these essays together and actually publish it. And that first took place in 2014. And at that time, your first book is always something that is a very complicated process. You don't know how it's going to be received. You always are saying to yourself, is anyone going to care? Am I really wasting my time doing this? What is impelling me to do this? And so finally, you just have to say, there has to be an inner calling. There has to be an inner motivation that rises above all of these worries and fears and anxieties, and just put it out there. And honestly, man, the best thing I can say as to why I suddenly started, and I'm 55 now, and I first started really, 2012, 2013. So, I was in my 40s, and I guess the best way to explain it was I got so frankly enraged and disappointed with where I saw the culture was going, and how I saw alleged academics presenting classical themes in history, that I said to myself, I can do better. I know I can do better, because they're missing everything. They're missing all the important stuff. They're missing all the important points. And I just felt like, uh, I felt like I wanted to put my seed out there into the world. And maybe this is a psychological dynamic that plays into this. I did a tweet a few days ago, um, said basically a man who, the childless man either goes down two paths. Either he becomes an embittered dunce who abandons himself to cynicism and bitterness, or he reflects his love out into the world and his knowledge out there into the world to share what he knows, to pass on the things that he has been gifted with over the decades, in the hope that maybe other people will find it as useful as he did. So there, I guess it was almost it was just a compulsion. I just felt like I had to do it, and I still feel just as strongly, if not even more strongly now than when I did back in 2013.
Well, I guess the interesting dynamic is because you come from an older generation. Gen X is, it's such a juxtaposition between Gen X and the Boomer generation. You guys are truly like a great counterbalance, because holy crap. But, the legacy the Boomers have left, which has impacted us multi-generationally, and of course there are good individuals within that wider bracket. I'm not trying to generalize, but as a heuristic, they left us a nation with broken families, a lack of leadership, a lack of courage to be able to actually, not simply stand by one's moral code, but to provide that for the coming generations, because of course a lot of morality and discipline is unpopular. It's obviously discipline is unpopular in terms of people who just want a easy hedonistic life, and they don't realize, well, what ends up happening is silver and all the pleasures of life turn into ash in your mouth when you're kind of overdosed, and you're basically destroyed by that. But one of the continuing legacies is that the elites of our country, and for instance, I remember a long time ago you had this article, and it really kind of struck home with me. It's called The Moral Corruption of the Elites. And that was such an impactful story, because, to me, my first book that I read, or quote-unquote read, when I was a kid, I remember it was like a very early memory. I was 4 years old, and I was holding a book by D.K. Series, Ancient Rome. And since then, I was obsessed with Rome. And of course, the sentiment of Romans to Rome, and why Rome became great, you realize, is because of, first of all, the moral discipline and fortitude of its men and women, but more importantly, they held themselves to a higher standard. They were always trying to exceed themselves. And I remember walking around, and, we're living in an American republic, and many of these people, they have an antipodal perspective and attitude, which is probably why our elites are completely, I guess, corrupt. They sell out the interests of Americans for their own self, their own gratification. And, you juxtapose this with the article, and I'll just quote here just for the legionaries that are listening. This is a story that goes back to Thebes and the Mantineseans who were engaged in battle, and basically putting your republic over your family, and putting the common good, higher ideals above your own petty self-interest. And this is something that is completely anathema to the Boomer mindset, the Gordon Gekko mindset of just simply greed and constant consummation. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the greatness of Rome is great because it's a perennial example of what right looks like. How is it that we should associate with each other? How is it that we should associate with, not simply the state, with our community, with our fathers and mothers, with our sons and daughters, and how to raise them in a positive light. And, you're a great admirer of Cicero, of course, and I know you're a lawyer yourself, and obviously a previous military man, the Marine Corps, a fellow officer. And I guess I wanted to ask you, what is it specifically about Cicero that, kind of entranced you, that really dedicated your life, or really had such a powerful impact? Because I know that you cite and read a lot from Arab scholars as well, but it seems like Cicero is the figure that looms large on your horizon.
Yeah, that's a good question, Lance. There's a lot of reasons why I was drawn to Cicero. The first, well, one of the first reasons was just the beauty of his Latin periods, his sentences, the way he expressed himself. As you know, I know you know many foreign languages, and so you can understand, you can relate to when just the sheer beauty of seeing prose constructed in such a, and it's hard to get it, and I do my best when I try to render it into English, but you can never quite achieve the alliteration and the incredible balance of the clauses and the really just artful construction of his sentences. So on an aesthetic sense, I was attracted to that. But more importantly, and I've translated now, let's see, the first Ciceronian was the Stoic Paradoxes, then On Duties, then on Moral Ends, then Tusculan Disputations, then On the Nature of the Gods. So I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of what makes him tick, what makes his mind work. And what I was drawn to and what I admired in him was there was at least, and you touched on this in your remarks just now, there was at least an attempt to establish a normative standard for moral philosophy, for virtue, for ethics, for a sense of patriotism. And these values, when I first began to be exposed to them, just leaped off the page to me because, like you said, these are completely the opposite of what you were exposed to growing up and what I was exposed to growing up. As you said, I was a Gen Xer. We were the latchkey kids. We were the forgotten generation. The boomers are still in power. They're still holding on to power. We never had our chance. We never had our chance to lead. Yeah. In many ways, and that's why I feel such anger at the way the millennials and Zoomers are being just royally screwed over, for lack of a better word. And so I feel like it's my mission to distill this wisdom and to pass it on in a way that's understandable, because there are translations out there, but they're unreadable, as you probably have figured out. I mean, you can't even, the sentences there, it's all this Victorian English that's obnoxious to modern sentiment. And frankly, I found out from going through, some of it's just wrong. Like, and you would be surprised, like some of these alleged professionals, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised knowing what we know about professionals. Some of it is just substandard. So there was a real need to overhaul everything, to start from square one. And I felt like I was in a unique position to do this. Maybe a truly unique position to do this, because I had the time, I had the ability, I had the motivation. I didn't have a family, I didn't have any distractions, but I actually had I feel like the marketplace has spoken. I have the ability to do it. I can do it in a way that no one else can. So this was something that was I had a responsibility to continue with this project and to continue with doing this, and I will continue to do it because it needs to be done. And just in the same way that you were attracted to the wisdom and the history of the classical world, so was I, because as you've figured out, everything is imbued with this sense of moral purpose and character and moral philosophy. Everything, all of the literature is just imbued with it, which today's literature doesn't even address this at all. The historians, the philosophers, the playwrights, this concern with the building and development of character was just a revelation to me. And it really is, I think, the primary reason that people should pursue classical studies, because it opens a world that's been forgotten and been neglected.
Yeah, and you know, I have the book right in my hand right here on Duties by Cicero, and a lot of the issues that we face today is just the selfishness, right? We talk about selfishness. No one's selfless. You know, you learned in the Marine Corps, you know, JJ did tie buckle, you know, the selflessness of leadership is necessary. And, you know, the ancients, they would call that duties. Your duties, what you owe some, you know, I believe, I'm a firm believer that we should live in this life so that way we give back more than we took. And I believe that Cicero is precisely one of these. And to emphasize and underline what you said about previous translations of Cicero, you're absolutely right. I myself, I run a publishing company. I have a lot of exposure with a lot of these Victorian era translations of various different books, and you can know when someone's trying to be obfuscatory, if that makes sense. They're trying to conceal their lack of knowledge by simply making it difficult to read the content. And I just wanted to, first of all, restate your prose, not simply your Latin and your mastery of Latin, but your mastery of the English language itself is a credit to our wider civilization. And I wanted to just read a paragraph here that's stuck with me from the translation of Cicero on duties, and I'm just reading here on pleasure and pain and duties. And indeed, this question is a common one among all philosophers. Who would dare call himself a philosopher who proposes no general precepts of moral duty? But there are few schools which, through their ideas on the nature of good and evil, significantly distort the idea of duty. He proposes the idea of the highest good in such a way that it is completely disconnected with moral virtue, and rather measures it according to how it relates to one's personal expediency, if he felt this way and were not governed by his better nature, can cultivate neither friendship nor justice nor generosity. He who judges pain to be the greatest evil is certainly in no way strong. He who sets up pleasure as the highest good cannot be considered temperate. End quote. And so I hope you can understand the eloquence that Cicero obviously writes, and simply the mastery of being able to translate and encapsulate that spirit into English is so incredibly difficult. And I remember when I was reading this, I was in college, and I think I was just frustrated with life. I was just, you walk around campus and people who are supposed to be your mentors and moral superiors, your archetypes, people that you're supposed to emulate. Namely, this political science guy from my college was a Vietnam veteran, but he was a Marxist-Leninist and openly bragged about how he fragged his officer, while he's out in the field. And I was just disgusted. And I remember it was like shortly after that I had come across your work, and I bought a book a long time ago, right? And it just, I don't know, it was just a moment that kind of just struck me. It just was so powerful because it made me understand that there was those sentiments that I felt were true, and it's just a matter of championing them. And there was somebody out there who was a paradigm of that kind of virtue, you know what I mean? And so that is certainly something that I just wanted to say thank you so much, because it really does make an impact, especially for me and my friends.
No, I'm really glad to hear that, Lance. Well, I'm horrified to hear that this guy actually said that, or I mean,
he alluded to it. It was crazy. It was honestly really crazy.
Well, I believe when people tell you what they are, you have to believe them, and I certainly believe it. But man, I think you reach a point in your life where you have to decide: are you going to stand up on the side of righteousness, or are you going to take the path of moral corruption? And really everyone is faced with that choice, and we can avoid it, we can dodge it, we can try to skirt along the wall and try to pretend that it doesn't exist. And there are many guys that do. But at the end of the day, every man has to decide for himself if he's going to take the path of virtue, or is he going to go down the path of corruption. And it's not an easy choice for many guys. the expedient thing to do is just to put your head down and play ball and keep quiet and go with the flow and do what everybody else does. But at some point, your inner soul cries out for release, and you just can't accept what you see around you anymore. And you know as well as I do that there's a reason why these books have been hidden from us for so long, because the people that are shaping the culture and have shaped it in the past 40 years know very well what's in those books. And they don't want you to have exemplars of moral rectitude, of leadership, of legitimate patriotism. They want you to be a loser. They want you to be a fat, pathetic slave to just sit and just slurp at the trough of the feed that they serve. And they don't articulate this openly. It's all done indirectly. It's all done through the culture, through the demasculization of men, and we have to help our brothers. We have to help our sons. We have to help our comrades to see that there is a different way. And the betrayal that these young guys have experienced is so upsetting to me. And it started again. I mean, Gen X, I think in many ways was in many ways betrayed, but it's just gotten worse with the millennial generation and the Zoomers now, where they don't even have, many of them don't even have prospects of jobs or be able to raise families, to find women that are it's just awful. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm mixing into this, and I don't want to get off track, but
no, I did want to, just before you continue, just say what I enjoy about your leadership really is the fact that instead of focusing, you could easily be a victim. You could easily say, oh, woe is me, the boomers are the cause of everything. No, you're like, well, there's a problem, this is the origin, let me be the solution. Let me look out for not simply just myself, look out for others who you haven't even met. And I think that's precisely what people don't understand, is that once you master yourself, once you live selflessly, once you learn to work within, the solutions are all within yourself, your soul. And once you start to exude that example, people follow. And I mean, that's your experience, right? I don't want to take you off track, but
no, absolutely, Lance. And we have to, our anger can be somewhat tempered by what we see today as the result of historical and social forces. It's an axiom of history, and from the opening paragraphs of Sallust's War of Jugurtha and the Conspiracy of Catiline, that when wealth and riches and power and luxury grow, inevitably a process of moral corruption sets in and slowly poisons the body politic. Politics becomes factionalized. People focus only on themselves. The old ethic, the virtues of patriotism and sacrifice and duty, become laughed at. They become scorned. And this is what we're seeing today. And these are historical forces. America has enjoyed many, many decades of uninterrupted peace and prosperity and luxury, and we're paying the price for that now. And the price is going to continue to be paid until we have the kind of national awakening or the national reform movement that changes these things. And but history tells us that it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be painless. It's going to be painful. But I'm confident that if we can leave behind us a lasting legacy, this is something that can be drawn on by future generations who will say, okay, here we have something, someone did something, someone tried, someone put in the effort. And this, I think, can act as a beacon and an inspiration for those who follow us.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's by your own example, by your own initiative that you took, you've inspired thousands. I mean, thousands of people, truly. And to say nothing of course, of the secondary effects that you've had and the tertiary ones. And so, I guess I remember having a conversation with a buddy a while ago about decadence, and you already can hear the eye rolls commencing. The whole decadence thing, and people they disregard it because I think they don't understand what it is, and a lot of them perceive it to be this kind of anachronistic concept which has no bearing on reality. Maybe you could, I guess, define it for us and explain how it is that it interfaces with us, and why is it that, for instance, wealth, plenty, comfort, why is it that those are the things which are the prime factors which are injurious to virtue, really?
Well, I think it. I think the reason, Lance, is that the qualities and the traits and the virtues that promote the strengthening and the flourishment of civilizations are virtues that spring from and are born from hardship. These, when mankind first began to band together to form communities, they had to share resources. They had to pool their strength. They had to cooperate. They had to at least believe in some form of patriotism, in the sense that they were protecting their land and their hearth and their animals and their cultivatable land. And so hardship is really what promotes the virtues that gift a lasting and flourishing civilization. But as civilizations grow in power and wealth, more and more free time is given to people. There's more leisure. There's more time to pursue the arts of indolence, of luxury. Women and men become more interested in their own gratification than they do in serving their fellow man, serving their community, serving their families. And so what happens then is an ethic of frivolity, an ethic of lassitude, corruption takes hold, and it starts with the upper classes. And from there, the people in the lower classes key off that example they see, just in the same way that people today key off the example of politicians and, God forbid, media and figures in Hollywood or movies and music. Because we don't have an aristocracy in America, we have the aristocracy of money. Mm-hmm. But what these people are promoting is actually the traits that promote the decomposition and the decay of societies. Because once the martial virtues are abandoned, once men stop understanding and appreciating the virtues of physical fitness, of soundness of character, of sacrifice, of group cohesion, then they are unable to shoulder the responsibilities of war. Because as you know, war is the undercurrent that underlies everything in civilization. A state's or a nation's ability to wage aggressive war and to defend itself defend itself from aggression from others, coming from others, is the key thing that really, I think historically, bespeaks what the purpose of an existence of a nation is. Mm-hmm. Because as we all know, we live in a world of nation states, and we would be forced to admit that it's a war of every state against every other. It's the law of the jungle that governs the relations of states. And those nations that allow themselves to be corroded by luxury and vice will inevitably find themselves to be the prey of others, of younger, hungrier, more aggressive mouths. Mm. In many ways, you can see this now with the migration crisis that's happening in America and in Western Europe. I mean, we're simply being overrun by more aggressive people who are willing to stake everything. Mm-hmm. And this ties into a lot of, and this is why, as you know, I have, but this decline can be arrested, but it takes I mean, there are examples in history of emperors and kings and leaders that have stopped this type of corruption and have reformed the system, but it takes a leader of real vision and real power, and someone that's willing to wield the orb and the scepter in a way that's going to crush and put to the sword those who prevent the nation from defending itself. Because this is what needs to happen. And no one wants to talk about this, of course, but we're in a life and death struggle right now, and the issue is still in doubt.
It is in doubt, and which is to say is yet to be decided, right? Which is
Right.
a positive thing, which means we have an opportunity to rectify the beleaguered situation. We have the opportunity to step up and be what our country needs us to be. And reflecting on Rome, reflecting on Sparta, for instance, and talking about decadence, I think the most important, or probably the most impactful aspect of wealth is that it occludes, or it kind of makes not obvious for the average person why it is that discipline is important, why it is that patriotism is important, why it is that your family is important. And the reason being, of course, in an environment of plenitude, at least in the near term, those things become atrophied. They don't have a necessity. However,
Right.
it takes someone of particular vision and understanding to understand that that's a summer of life, of bounty. There is always a winner, and one must always live one's life as if it is constantly winter. And this is something that I think, obviously, the boomers have famously betrayed. I mean, simply this country, is the fact that everyone before them sacrificed and fought and had discipline and paid it forward, and the boomers just simply reaped it all and left nothing behind. And I mean, again, like I said, it's a heuristic. It's an 80% solution. It's not 100%. There are some cool dudes out there. However, the wider point that I've been trying to do with Lance's Legion, and maybe I could have some background or maybe some feedback, is basically to reintroduce the martial virtues to the American Republic, one which we were actually famous for having had, especially in the in our early years.
Right.
And that
Correct.
It's not outside of our power of exuding, and it's something it's quite simple. And for me, the solution is this: obviously dedicating yourself, finding a moral compass, and this is why I'm obviously interviewing you right now, so I can show the legionaries out there what right looks like. Second of all, dedicating yourself to a certain level of physical fitness, so you can be always called up if necessary. And as well as being a leader and being able to be courageous in the sense of, like Cicero said, suffering. I forgot what it was. It was suffering for doing the right thing. That is glory. And to really, really reinforce that ethos where there's 10,000 men, shouting you down. Be that one who shouts over them. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I really want to bring back to the American Republic. I mean, what do you think about that? What do you think about that solution?
Well, I totally agree with you, Lance. I completely agree. I think that's exactly what we need. And it has to start with education. It has to start with, reading and learning and I think, and you talked about this, but I think example is just so important, because if guys could understand just how much young both boys and girls, how much they key off of, if young people understood just how much young children just key off what they see, they would conduct themselves hopefully in a way that was a credit to themselves, a credit to their nation. We've got to have examples. We've got to have education, and we've got to promote a culture of this stuff. I mean, these martial virtues don't just spring up into existence on their own. They have to be reinforced. And the problem that a lot of guys experience is that even if things are exposed to them, they've got a media culture out there telling them to drive run after Bitcoin and, and get Lambos and all this stupid, frivolous nonsense, which leads you only to the poorhouse or to prison or to a life of misery and disappointment. But they can't see it. They don't see it, and you can tell them. But it's a hard road because men are more inclined to follow the path of evil, frankly. And even I don't think that man is by nature evil, but it's the path of evil can be very seductive because it seems that these guys are getting ahead. It seems that they know what they're talking about, that they have everything figured out. But when you look deeper and you really conduct a deeper inquiry, you realize that it's all a sham, it's a lie, it's a fraud. And what appears to be on its face sound and resilient and lasting turns out to be ephemeral and useless. So it's a hard path, and there are many who will follow it and there are many who will not. But the first the first fruits. I wrote an essay a couple months ago. The first fruits of virtue and character are to offend the ignorant and the evil.
I remember that. Yeah, that was such a good one. Yeah.
You're going to be attacked. You're going to be marginalized. You're going to be told that you don't know what you're doing. And every man has to decide for himself. And I don't think a person should go around shouting slogans and being overly
confrontational.
Yeah, confrontation with people because you're not gonna win over. Example is the best way. Example has to be the best way. But I do think that if we can reach out and touch even a small percentage of people, then we will have done our job. And I think that there will be hope for future generations because the people in power now, man, they have screwed it up so badly. I mean, where do we begin? I mean, we don't even want to go down. We don't even want to talk about that because that's a whole conversation unto itself.
100%. And reading the plutocratic reader, that was eye-opening, truly. And another thing that I'm going to link for you legionaries to read, it's mandatory. But returning back to the martial virtues here, and I don't want to keep you for too long, but I would like to say something which I think most people, they're searching for solutions, right? They're looking for, obviously we have Quintus Curtius. We have this body of work that you have so, laboriously created for us for the future, which is great. And I think here's the other aspect that I think most people really need to understand is that it's leadership. There's no bad teams. There are only bad leaders. And I don't know if you're familiar with Jocko Willink at all. But
a little bit. I don't follow his podcast, but I've seen him snippets here and there. He's an ex-SEAL. I guess he does a lot of. He's got a popular podcast. Right. I'm generally familiar with him. Yeah.
Right. So I guess one of the things that he harps on, the general themes, is that basically it all comes down to agency and leadership. And I remember you had a podcast yourself that talked about you have agency, you have a choice, you're accountable for what you choose to do. And obviously, I think that people don't understand, and the military is the best, I guess, maybe case study to show how leadership really affects a unit of people, a group of people, because it really does have that kind of effect night and day. You can, fix for, everyone has the same composition of a unit, but you can change the leader and have totally different performances. And so, I see the American Republic, and I think things are going sideways because we have bad leadership, just as you said. And so what the solution is not necessarily, to try and prove our leadership, but simply to provide our own, to provide people that are inspired by your example and the example of others, to be exactly what you're saying, was to stand up for the Republic, to stand up for the virtues that is constructed on, and to stand up for not simply oneself. And one of the most interesting revisionists, Pinko Kami revisionists that talk about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, they take it at face value and then they warp it, right? But remember, all these men were well read in the classics, and they understood happiness in the sense of the Greek term arete, which is excellence, and not happiness, which, if you kind of deduce further, that's the understanding of purpose over pleasure. And I think that's precisely what your main message is precisely giving, you don't promise a life of ease. You don't promise a bed of roses. You promise suffering and pain, but also adventure and certitude, but most of all, fulfillment, which is a lot more of a substantial, I guess, reward than a Bugatti or whatever crap, you can get. So, I mean, do you think that's an accurate representation of your view?
Yes, it's exactly correct. That's the undercurrent that I think pulses through everything that I've tried to write and put out there. It's that there really is only all of the negative effects of moral corruption and moral turpitude that we're seeing. In opposition to that, there is one way, and one way only, that a man can redeem himself and to attain, so to speak, a way to touch something that's divine and lasting, and that is the serious study of virtue. Because it's the only thing at the end of the day that protects you. It's the only thing that's going to stay with you and keep you out of the abyss. And when I say that, I really mean that. As you know, I believe it. I don't just say it, I actually believe it. I don't think that it's true. I know it's true. And this is something that takes time to really understand. And, I'm an attorney now, and I've been a practicing attorney for about 25 years now. And I work with the average person, just the general public. And I've seen, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases over the years where people were implementing these principles have turned either their lives around or have turned them upside down. Mm-hmm. So it's not just an exercise in idle speculation. I'm not just some lecturer at a college here wagging my finger at someone expecting him to believe me just because I'm standing in front of a podium. This is actually true. It is absolutely true. And what you just said about leadership is also true. Leadership is not just something, it is everything. Even the most desperate situation can be turned around with visionary and inspiring leadership. And conversely, a great situation, a great country, a great state of affairs like ours can be set on the path of ruin with bad leadership or compromised leadership. Mm-hmm. So we have to persist. We have to continue to put one foot in front of the other, because that's the only thing that works. And believe me when I say it's the only thing that works. You cannot give up. You've got to keep trying. You've got to keep trying. You have to keep moving, because sooner or later, the worm always turns. Something happens, something changes, but you have to be there when that time comes. Because if you're on the sidelines, if you give up, if you collapse and drop your pack and sit on the side of the road and, I can't believe this is happening. This is awful. This is really terrible. I can't believe this is what's going on. You're going to be a quitter. You're going to be a quitter. And as you know, and as I know, nothing is worse than a quitter. So you've got to try. You've got to try, and you have got to exert whatever influence you can within the span of the influence that you have.
Of course.
And you've got to do the best you can, and we've got to get people into positions of authority and power in every industry, in every trade, and get them out there so that they can start to change the tide, turn the tide. Mm-hmm. I think it will happen, and it's going to be painful. It ain't going to be pretty. It never is, because with every drop of blood drawn by the lash will have to be repaid for with blood spilled in conflict. Mm-hmm. And this is an eternal truth, but we're going to have to do it.
And better still, I think, people really should recast the role of pain as not a negative or something indifferent. It's actually a positive, because pain indicates where you're lacking. Pain also indicates where you're growing, and discipline is the best kind of pain. And I always tell people, it's like a mantra of mine is run towards pain. And really, the first way to get around the the inducements of luxury is simply by seeing that, first of all, it's not pain, it's euphoria. And the pain that it causes is very subtle, but over time you feel it, and which is this anhedonistic aspect to life. You stop being part of life. You stop actually engaging with it, and it's unfulfilling, and that is existential pain. And that should be telling you that life is not about those things; it's about purpose. But on a lighter note, let's like lighten up just a little bit here, because I think people will be like, "Oh fuck," you know what I mean? So let's try to keep it a little bit simple. But
Right.
I was always curious. You went to college, you became a Marine Corps officer, and you did your term and you left. What inspired you to become a lawyer? And still further, to master Latin the way you have? What was the influence there?
Well, man, I got off active duty in '94, the end of '94. I was on for 4 years, from 1990 to 1994. I stayed in the reserves for some time after that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fully leave until 2000, but after I got off active duty, I frankly, it was just pretty much a very utilitarian decision. I knew that I needed a way to earn a living. I needed a profession, and I always liked words, argument, things like that. And I figured that it would something that was interesting to me and I was passionate about. So, I went through the exams, took the law school exams, and I, went to law school. There really wasn't any, there wasn't any, miraculous mission I had. I felt like, look, you know what you're good at, you know what things you like, and you tend to follow that path. But it's never easy. No one has it easy. And my first job out of law school, I was an assistant prosecutor in a rural county in Missouri. And then after that, I went into business with a friend of mine who was a classmate from law school, and we've been going, since 2000. So it's like 24 years now. So it's been a long time, and we again serve the general public, and it's not easy, but I guess I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. I guess this is where, obviously, this must be where I'm at. It's like that scene in Taxi Driver where the wizard tells, well, how come I don't drive, how come I don't own my own taxi? Well, I want to work the night shift. I guess this is because I just want to work the night shift.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, you kind of end up where you're supposed to be. And in terms of Latin, why did I do that? I mean, I got into the language, many, many years ago, and I'd been studying it seriously for many, many years, but I never really had a chance to put it to use, really. And somehow everything just meshed. Everything just came together. I can't explain it. In many ways, I still can't explain it. I guess it comes down to passion and love. Mm-hmm. And it really is that. I know people listening to this might think, oh, that sounds... But no, you have to be passionate. You have to love what you do. You have to feel an inner drive to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to be going through the motions. So it's really that simple.
And I'm sure you legionaries listening, you can hear that it's inspired. Truly, like your mastery of Latin is not simply just basic. Oh, this is what he said. It's you can tell how much time you've labored over simply one phrase or another. And I myself, I'm a polyglot just like you. And you know how difficult it can be, and especially
this last one, this on the nature of the gods. This took me 2 years of daily effort. I mean, I'm not saying this to complain. I mean, frankly, a lot of scholarship, what people don't want to, a lot of scholarship is brute work. It's just brutal drudgery. You have to stay at it every single day, and you don't just sit down and these things just come out. You have to look up words. You have to find the right construction. You have to, in some cases, the terminology is obscure. The meaning is not clear. There are different proper nouns that are used to describe things. I mean, I don't want. That's my job. I don't want to bore you with all that.
No. But it's continue. Yeah.
It's you've got to be prepared to do the heavy lifting. And frankly, the reality is very few people are willing to make that commitment, that sacrifice. And there are times when I just thought, geez, I got to be crazy for doing this. So, but there were some times during it can be very, very. But then again, it's all worth it when you put the final touches. When you put the final touches on there and it's out there, it's almost like this muse took over your body and channeled the words through you, and it wasn't even your work. It was just some higher plane of existence that just used you as a conduit. I know it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, I guess. But
I understand you, and I think just for the benefit of the audience, many people, you look on YouTube, you look on celebrities in the media, and you see a highlight reel. You see all the benefits. You see the end product. I look at Quintus Curtius's website. I see all the stuff that he's accomplished, and I see all the positives, the books and all this stuff. But underlying that iceberg of product is 90% of his time spent in drudgery, like you said, discipline, in the pain of continuing through a mission, of no recognition, of no support, and simply hard work. And boring hard work sometimes. And I understand that myself because I just got finished editing an 800-page book, and I really want to tear my hair out. But wow. I think most people don't understand that excellence is built on that pain. And yes, we're sitting here having a really pleasant conversation, touching on things that we have achieved. But all those achievements are made by day in and day out of discipline. Day in and day out, laying the brick of Rome within your soul every day. And so I think that's something I wanted to, the last kind of thoughts here that I wanted to finish is, how is it that you, obviously when I think of Quintus Curtius, I don't just think of a lawyer. I don't think of just a Marine officer. I don't think of simply an American. I think of someone who will stand the test of time, who is actually simply an archetype. A person that will go down in history as a leader, as someone who saw something different. But how do you pass that torch on in the sense of how do you get other people to raise themselves out of this torpor? And how do you get other people to embrace the pain of discipline, the pain of existence towards living a higher life? And how is it that you have found fulfillment in your mission?
Yeah. Man, I think the best way to answer that is to just say that I love it. I mean, through all the pain, through all the suffering and the sacrifice. Again, Tusculan Disputations took me 2 years of daily effort. I guess I just love it. And when you say, how do you communicate that or pass it on to others? The answer is that he who is worthy of it will find it. He who is seeking this product will find his way to it. There is some sort of divine connectivity out there where people will naturally fall into the slots and crevices that fortune makes for him or her. And I really do believe that. In the same way that I literally just, within the span of a year, I just decided to start doing this. I didn't have no one suggested it to me. Nobody recommended it. I didn't have anyone else to, use as a template or a model. Mm-hmm. But if you love what you're doing, if you believe in what you're doing, other people will see that. You can't inspire passion in anyone else unless you yourself are passionate. People have to see that. People have to see you up there in the mix, in the trenches with them. That's what they want to see. Mm-hmm. And anyone that can do that has my undying admiration. And I'll never fault a man, and I've said this before, I'll never fault a man for trying. He who is trying to put in an effort and is operating from a position of sincerity, a position of good faith, a position of diligence, I will always give that man the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. And I always have and I always will, because that's really what it takes. You've got to sometimes just go operate on trial and error. Find out what works. Okay, this worked. That didn't work. I guess I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to do this. You've got to try. And the same thing is true, I think, in so many endeavors of life. You've got to keep on rolling. You've got to keep on, as I say, keep on crunching and keep on blasting. As you know, I like to use a lot of jokes and not amiable nonsense to kind of keep you guys entertained on Twitter with the, Mr. Nibblicious and all the other.
I love that guy. That guy's awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, I just think, like you said, you got to lighten it up. I mean, sometimes, if it's just a constant stream of heaviness, some guys, you got to. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but you have to be aware of your audience sometimes, and people need a little bit of levity.
Of course.
A little bit of levity, a little bit of humor. And that's one of the things I find so objectionable about so many of these people, Lance, these people that write, they have no sense of humor. They take themselves, there's never any self-effacing humor. There's never any jokes. They somehow think that if they laugh or share some good cheer, that somehow that diminishes other things they say. I'm not sure what the dynamic is.
Well, you see, when your life is just one big joke, making one comes at your expense. So, that's.
Or I think it's some sort of lack of confidence too. I think some of these guys, they think that these thought leaders, they just. I mean, you look at the stuff. This is just turgid and depressing nonsense, unrelieved by any sense of humor or of levity. But that's just me. I mean, I don't. Maybe some people don't.
I completely agree with you. I think people that are blowhards, nobody fucking takes them serious. And I admire Cato the Elder so much, but one of the reasons why he failed was because he's precisely a killjoy. And you got to realize that. Life, take it seriously, but you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And I think that's why people really enjoy you, is because obviously you're deadly serious in your convictions and you're extremely helpful, but you're able to laugh at yourself and laugh at the life and enjoy it. And I think that's what people want. It's not one or the other. And so it's a really good dichotomy of leadership. But Legionaries, before we leave here, I wanted to leave you with one last message, and this was from the article that Quintus Curtius wrote. And I think this kind of sums him up perfectly. And I'm reading from the article now called My Own 10 Commandments. I don't want to be sedated, to be happy, to be another grinning zombie who hectors me as I sit in a cushioned auditorium chair. I want to feel the salt spray on my face as my ship plows through the rolling, surging swell of life. Can you taste the tang? I must have it. I want to feel the taste of my own blood in my mouth as I am hit by a man stronger than I. I want to feel the satisfaction of hitting a man who deserves to be hit, perhaps. Because there is a wisdom in this. There is a balance in this. This delicate thread that connects us all, and this is the eternal truth, a truth far deeper than our own grinning friend with the Thai accent can yet comprehend. I call that good. I call that life itself. I promise nothing but struggle, hardship, and adventure. But I also promise life itself, a real life, richly lived, and more will follow me than will follow him. Since I've made my rejection of Mr. Thailand's avunicular, namby-pamby ethical code clear, I have an obligation to propose my own code. You can call them commandments if you want, and here they are. 1. You shall not shield yourself from raw, unvarnished experience. 2. You shall not hide from the clash, clang, and roar of life. Instead, you should welcome it. 3. You shall find the nature of that spirit that resides in you and that moves you to attempt great deeds. 4. You shall obey the call of that spirit, wherever it may take you. 5. You shall love passionately and hate passionately. 6. You shall realize that we are, each of us, alone. 7. You shall not expect your woman to complete you, and neither shall you complete her. 8. You shall realize that life is a brutal struggle, and you shall welcome the chance to enter the great arena of life, knowing that the only way to lose is by failing to participate. Pain is good, natural, and desirable. All honor and glory go to those who participate with zeal in the struggle. 9. You shall not expect the other man to be like you, or to understand you on more than a few points. He is he, and I am I. 10. You shall not expect and shall not seek a stupefying and illusory happiness from the world. You shall entitled to nothing except what is in you. And with that, legionaries, I'll leave you with Quintus Curtius, and just last thank you for being the leader that we needed in this life. And further, you should follow him. I'll have the details below. He'll be having a book out come June of this year, which is a compilation of his articles that he's written between 2021, correct, or 2020?
2020 to 2023, yeah.
2023. And please follow him, and Mr. Nibblicious too. I'll give him a shout out as well. But thank you so much, Quintus. I really do appreciate it.
No, thank you, Lance, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
All
it.
right. Okay.
This is General Lance, and this is Lance's Legion, signing off.